Good luck. God bless. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Christine, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. We are so glad you could join us for this important conversation, and we really appreciate you taking the time to invest in yourself and your role as a caregiver or leader in the care industry. Now, running a care business and managing teams and supporting caregivers, it's really not an easy task. And that's exactly why we are all here today to learn, share, and grow together. Now, we ask that you stay with us towards the end so you can get a chance to win a free copy of Suzanne White's book, Self Care for Caregivers. Before we dive in, we've had amazing people sign up, and we'd love to give them a special shout out, especially Yeni Estrada. Thank you so much for coming today. And also, please feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining from. We would love to see the community coming together just for this event. Now, I am thrilled to introduce our special guest today. She's an author, speaker, and passionate advocate for caregivers everywhere. She's walked the caregiving journey herself and now dedicates her time to empowering others with knowledge, compassion, and practical advice. She's also the author of Self Care for Caregivers, a must read for anyone navigating the demands of caregiving. So we'll talk more about that later. But now let's all welcome Suzanne White, founder of the Caregiver Warrior. She's about to come up. There she
Here we
is.
are. Hello,
Hi.
everyone. And thank you so much for having me and
Thank you,
this wonderful
Suzanne.
conversation.
I'm really excited. And so without further ado, we can dive right in. Are you ready?
I am.
Awesome. Okay. So for my first question, from your experience as the caregiver warrior, what are some practical ways that leaders in our care businesses can tap into their um, caregivers' best talents and strengths?
Oh, what a wonderful question to start with. All right. So I always say that caregivers, that all of us are on the same journey, but we all take different paths. And I think it is extremely important for leaders and managers and team supervisors to understand that each caregiver is different, even though we all have the same stresses and challenges and we have so much in common. There's a lot that we really have, we're different and we're unique and special. And I think that it's really important for the team leaders to really get to know your caregiver warriors, like really take an interest, really understand who they are, not just, fill out that form when they are first hired or, come to you. And you really need to understand where they excel, what their talents are, what their concerns are, and who they are at their very best. I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that. Just to follow up on that question, how do you think, um, I guess, leaders can encourage some of their staff to tap into their best skills, especially those who are kind of hesitant
Right.
because they aren't really comfortable just as much? Because some of these caregivers, I've heard most of them weren't caregivers in the first place, and it's their first time. So, how do you think they can navigate that kind of
Well, I think
situation?
we have to, in anything, I think we have to pay attention. I think that we can't assume that we know someone. I think we can't assume that someone could speak up. And I think that leadership is really defined by how aware we are of people around us and the culture we're creating. So I think it's important to have like regular check ins. Communication is key just in general. And I think it's really important to have regular check ins, not just about what's going on or their challenges, but perhaps what their aspirations are, what they enjoy, how they're feeling about their environment and their challenges, to have really good, substantive conversations. And I think that it's important to just understand that not everyone is a very, proactive personality. And sometimes we have to draw people out authentically. I don't think anybody should do anything that feels false in any way. But I think having a general interest in the people you're working with is really important. And they feel that. And I think it encourages them to speak up.
Yeah, I love that. And so I also want to focus on what you said about regularly checking up on them, because we both know that this job is emotionally and physically demanding, right? So how do you think leaders can build resilience this time and maintain enthusiasm among their caregivers, especially during the most challenging times?
Yes, I think, once again, you have to be observant and you have to be proactive. I think leaders really have to be proactive and they have to really read the room. I always used to say, especially when I was caregiving for my parents, which could be difficult at times because I didn't necessarily have a great relationship with my mom. I had to read the room. She had dementia. So it's really important when I say about reading the room, don't assume anything. Like don't expect too much, don't expect too little. Don't assume anything. Read the room, be observant, slow down, and take the time to check in with how everybody's looking, feeling, and acting.
That I love that you said that, how everybody is feeling and acting, because you're trying to I appreciate what you're trying to say. It's like, it's more of like, it's not just always about yourself, right? And sometimes team dynamics is also really important, and it's also crucial in caregiving. So what strategies do you recommend for building a stronger, more cohesive team, which,
Mm.
because I believe caregiving can sometimes be isolating, right? And you know this. And so what do you think about that?
Well, and it is isolating, absolutely. And I feel that just the given nature of caregivers is very selfless, right? I think people who sign up to be caregivers, I think we're born that way. I think there's a group of us that are hardwired to be caregivers. And I think that it's a very selfless thing that we do. And we're very concerned about our job and our commitment and our responsibility and the other person. But, just self less means less self, right? So when we're trying to build a team and a cohesive team and a caring team, we have to make sure that it's a give and take and that we're going out of our way to create a culture where people feel safe, because a lot of times caregivers feel like they have to be stoic, they can't talk up, or they can't complain, or they can't make mistakes. And that's crazy. I mean, we have to understand that we're human and we're going to make mistakes. So we have to make sure that the team feels like they can talk to each other, that that there's an open dialogue, that no one has to be scared, no one's going to judge them, and that they can come and get a really good support system if they need it.
With that, how do you think these leaders can create a more positive and supportive environment that really fulfills their caregivers' needs, and to also help them stay motivated and fulfilled?
Well, the bottom line of it is, first of all, be accessible, right? Just, make sure that it environment speaks to someone being able to come to you with anything and being available. I think there's so much stress on all levels in caregiving, in facilities, and when we take the commitment on to care for others. Everybody's kind of stressed out. And I think that if we're not careful, we can sort of put out I'm fine, I'm okay, or don't bother me, or I don't need to talk right now, or I'm not available. We have to be available all the time. And I think it's really important to try to slow down, continuously take emotional temperature of not only yourself as a leader, but yourself as a caregiver. And everybody needs to be aware of what's going on all the time. And managers need to be available. And they really have to have a radar. I call it like a caregiving radar. Keep the radar going. And a boop, 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 oh, over here, there's maybe a little something, or someone looks, more quiet than usual. Someone seems a little more agitated than usual. It's about reading the room, but also making sure that everybody feels safe to come to them if there's an issue.
I really want to focus on that, making sure that it's safe for these caregivers to come to them. How do you think? Okay, let's say I'm a leader, right? I have staff right now, and none of them really want to open up as much as I provide platforms for them to reach out and rant, even. So, how would I approach that in conversation with them?
But this is a great point. Great point. And here's how I find that it works for me. I open up first. I
Mm.
share my story first. I make sure they understand that I too am under pressure, that I've maybe been in the same situation. If I have experience on the street or on, in the general field, that I share first. I find that when we share our stories and people hear our stories, they're more apt to open up to us too. Because there's a Me Too moment. And that's what we want. We want the Me Too moment. We want to be able to have people say, oh my gosh, I've been feeling so upset about that, but you went through that too. Me too. So I think that leaders who are having a team that maybe, they feel like they're a little bit reserved and not ready to open up. If you open up first and power of example, it's going to help them open up too.
Especially the Me Too part, because most of these leaders, they were also CNAs and caregivers before they got into this big role, right? And I love that you put that out there, because sometimes it just takes one person to speak up for them to realize, oh, wait, I can speak up about that too. I really, really love that. Um, Forgive me for asking another follow-up question about that, but um, what advice would you give employers this time, right? People who handle staff, because for sure they're also dealing with a lot of challenges. Some of them really do multitask, apart from managing their caregivers. So I guess, what advice would you give leaders who are themselves afraid of speaking up?
Well, it's difficult to be a leader. It's difficult to be in a role that's stressful and multidimensional. And I think it's very safe to say that we all have expectations of ourselves that perhaps need to be lowered. So the first thing I think we need to do is lower our expectations of ourselves. I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist, and we try so hard to do it all perfectly, and none of us are perfect. And I think leaders who are vulnerable, who allow others to see their vulnerability, are creative leaders. We all need help. We all need community. We can't do it alone. And caregiving takes a village. You can absolutely be a great manager or a great leader and let other people know how you feel. That, hey, we have a situation here that I'm not kind of comfortable with. Could we talk about it? Getting feedback, allowing feedback from your team and open discussions on a regular basis can really be the path to great cooperation.
Because I think we can all agree that when you allow feedback, when you allow both of you to grow, it really allows all of you to be more productive and to even have job satisfaction, if you think about it, because you get to do your work better, right?
Yes.
So I guess, what are your top tips this time for creating productivity, efficiency, and overall enthusiasm in a care workplace, especially by better supporting caregivers?
I think the bottom line of it is we need a culture of cooperation and support. I think that we have to understand how stressful these jobs are. And oftentimes they're overworked, they're overextended. They have so much pressure on themselves. Anyone who goes into this field has to have a certain personality. They want to serve others, period. And there's a lot of pressure in that. And even the leaders who want to have great teams, they want everyone, including their clients, to feel really good and have great quality of care. So there's a lot of pressure. So we have to take as much steam out of that steam pot as we possibly can. And I think that any kind of resources that we can apply and get for our teams, we need to absolutely fight for. You know, good competitive compensation is really good. Good benefits, flexible scheduling, talking to the team about scheduling, talking to the team about what they need, taking their suggestions, like having a suggestion box, having a suggestion meeting, making sure that they're involved. It makes them feel like they can invest in the company and in the clients and in the leadership, making sure that they have mental health resources, physical health resources, and peer-to-peer groups. There is nothing like caregivers talking to other caregivers. That's an incredible source. So I think the more that we absolutely make sure that we have a situation that allows feedback, compensation, and resources really helps us.
I really love what you said there. Um, I love all the things that you listed down on how we can actually build a supportive community like that. But I also want to take the opportunity to ask you, because in your book, you give so many practical advice for caregivers to help themselves, right? So I guess this is a little fun challenge as well, and a fun question for you. How do you think some leaders can use some of the guides in here for their own staff?
Well, I think that when I wrote the book, there's 140 tips and tricks in that book, many of which I've used myself. What's lovely is that there's one on each page, and sometimes I have to use 139 of them before I get relief as a caregiver. You know, I've been through all kinds of caregiving situations and have hired teams. So I think that the first thing we have to do from top to bottom is we have to understand that self-care is not a luxury, that it's critical, that we're entitled to it, whether we're leading the team or we're a member of the team, that we all need to take our emotional temperature daily, maybe hourly, and we need to take care of ourselves in whatever way that means. I mean, I think that it's extremely important for companies, you know, to make sure that the staff is physically, emotionally, and spiritually supported. But I also think that we have to understand that we're all entitled to that, that it's not a luxury, and we need to invest in it. We need to invest in ourselves, and we need to invest in our teams.
Totally agree. And I really would love to keep going with my questions, but we do have a few questions from our viewers. So we are going to ask that. But before that, I want to remind everyone to please subscribe to our newsletter and join our exclusive and free group so you can get a free copy of Suzanne's book, Self-Care for Caregivers, a practical guide to caring for you while you care for your loved one. Okay, let's dive right into the questions. And also, for those who are watching just now, if you have a question for Suzanne, please do drop it in the chat along with your name and which facility you're from, so we can give you a proper shout out. All right, we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. All right, for our first question, we have a really good one. So Suzanne from Suzanne Wamba, their question is, why is this such a transient workforce?
Well, I think it's a difficult job. And I think that sadly, we aren't supporting our caregivers as much as we need to be supporting them. In other words, I think oftentimes the compensation, the hourly wage and the compensation perhaps isn't as good as it can be. I think we need to make sure that we're investing in benefits and compensation. I know it's difficult sometimes to meet bottom lines. However, if you invest in your team financially, maybe even adding, part-timers who can relieve the full-timers, making sure that shifts are more, that the shifts are more flexible and more well planned out. I think it's really important to understand that that's sometimes where the investment needs to be. And you're in the long run, it's going to really return a lot. You're going to get a lot of return on your investment because the client is going to get better service because your caregivers are more consistent and they're happier. You
Definitely.
know, right. And again, it's difficult because it's very challenging work. And I think we have to do everything we can to really acknowledge that we need self-care and support for these warriors. That's why I call them warriors. I mean, they're fighting battles every day and challenges every day. And it's really takes a lot of proactive support to make them feel safe and secure and happy.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. Um, that's the perfect way to end it because I have another question from you from Yen Estrada, and you already touched on this earlier, but I guess before I go to her question, I want to also add while some facilities, some businesses want to provide great compensation, some of them can't because they're just starting out, right? And so, do you agree that for those who can't yet provide better or competitive compensation, do you think it matters? Do you think having the right culture at least
Yes.
helps?
Yes.
Right, because
Yes.
Yen Estrada is asking, how do you think you can set the right culture in her assisted living facility in that case?
Yes, and this is a very important point, okay? Because we all want to be compensated appropriately. However, I find that it's even more important to most caregivers to feel appreciated,
Mm-hmm.
respected, and acknowledged. That goes a long way. That's riches. In other words, if a caregiver goes to work and feels at the end of the day or even the end of the week that they're applauded or they're acknowledged or they're appreciated or they're heard, believe me, that's going to go so far for them to feel like they want to not only show up every day, but show up with enthusiasm and purpose. Give them purpose, involve them, especially if it's a startup company or startup facility. Get them involved, listen to their feedback. They will feel respected and they're going to want to be the best caregivers they can possibly be.
I love that. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to the next question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you need to do to become a great caregiver?
Well, first of all, if you're a caregiver, you're a great caregiver right out of the box. Period. We have to understand that you're showing up. Do you know how many people don't show up?
Mm-hmm.
If you have the purpose of serving others, right away, you're a miracle worker. You're an angel walking on earth. Okay. So it's this mindset, the mental health of caregivers isn't talked about a lot. You have to understand that you're human, you're going to make mistakes, but you're leading with the best intentions and a good heart. So automatically you're brilliant. You're making a difference in someone's life every single day. They might not even tell you, you might not even know it, but I'm telling you, if you're serving others, you're making the world a better place. And you have to stay in that mindset and appreciate yourself and work with people who give you feedback and let you know how amazing you are.
Wow, I love that so much. Um, my next, it's perfect because my next question is from Alexander, and they're asking any strategies for excellent care. And I guess this goes both ways, both for the
Mhm.
caregiver or the leader.
Strategies in general,
Yeah.
just to have, well, I think self-awareness is really important for all of
Mm,
us. I think whether we're leaders or managers or caregivers, I think we have to be self-aware.
mm,
And I think that we need to constantly check in with ourselves physically and emotionally. And we need to always be reading the room, not only in our, like self-talk is really important too. We have to be aware of what we're saying to ourselves and to other people. I think being aware of what our needs are, feeling that we're entitled to having our needs met, and then getting them, asking for help. This is a very big thing. Ask for help. We don't have to do it alone. I always thought I had to do it alone, do it perfectly, and fix everything right away. It's impossible. Caregiving is a marathon, not a sprint, and it takes a village. So the most important strategy is give yourself some grace, ask for help, take it if it's offered, and feel better about it.
I love that. Oh, well, our next question is from someone from Trinity Garden, Hillsborough. And their question is, what advice would you offer to someone new to this industry regarding the best practices for hiring caregivers?
Best practices for hiring caregivers is make sure you have people who are invested. And really get to know them, get to know who they are. Resumes are wonderful. I mean, there's so much information. Obviously, you have to follow up. You need recommendations, but take the opportunity to ask pointed questions and get to know that person. Find out what makes them tick. Find out what their needs are. Find out who you think they're going to be 6 months in. Ask them about, right? Ask them about other opportunities they had in the past and what didn't work for them and what did work for them. You can find out a lot in those kind of questions.
Thank you for that. I love that idea. My next question for you is, what shift best help avoid burnout and help with caregiver retention? I guess this question is coming from one of our leaders.
He means like what shift as far as like how do you organize shifts and how do you create them
Yes,
and how do you
yeah.
plan them?
Make sure
Well,
that it's always, they don't burn out.
yes.
From
Well, and again, I think it's a team effort, and I think you have to have weekly, if not daily, check-ins. And I think you need to understand who can handle what and who's burnout. It's our responsibility as leaders to understand what our staff is going through, what their thresholds are, and where they're at. We have to be proactive about it, and we have to be really aware. And obviously, shifts, it's difficult to manage shifts so that the optimal opportunities are there for the optimal people. It's hard because stuff happens, especially in this particular field. So I get back down to, if possible, just make sure that people aren't overextended. Ask them. Do you know what I mean? Like make sure that you're in a culture where that they can come to you and say, "Hey, I feel great about doing a double shift. I'm really into it this week. It's great." Check in with them to make sure that that's the truth. And check in with if someone says, "Hey, are you comfortable with your shifts right now? How are you feeling? Is there something we could work on? Do you have suggestions? Let's sit down as a team and see how we can support each other. Let's have a really good conversation." So that will help me plan the next week.
Wow, I love that so much. And I'm excited to ask you the last question. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
This one is coming from Señorita Independiente. And their question is, Suzanne, what inspired you to become caregiver warrior, and what has your journey been like?
Well, my journey is still continuing. So I'm still caring for a family member with a chronic illness. And I've taken care of quite a few of my family members. But what started me off was my mom and dad needed help. My mom, they were working really hard together to hide from my sister and myself the fact that my mom had early stages of dementia. My dad's heart issues were getting more complicated. So he actually had to be taken off a plane. He was so exhausted, he couldn't get off the plane. And we found out that he was burnout completely.
Mm.
And I stepped up, as we do. You know, I repeat, I think we're hardwired as caregivers. I think we're born to be caregivers. There's always one in the family. There's always one, you know, there's always, like, career wise, there's always one professional who is drawn to this kind of a field. And I just showed up and took every step that I could as quickly as I could. I made a lot of mistakes. And I went into it thinking I could do it alone. I could do it perfectly, and I could do it right away, immediately. And I quickly found out that was going to burn me out. So I realized that I could share my experience, strength, and hope with other caregivers and help them survive their caregiving journey. Because boy, did I make mistakes. And I had to learn to love myself through the mistakes, to learn
Yes.
from my mistakes, and come up with strategies and understand that I had to prioritize me. You can't
Mm.
give from an empty cup. That's
Yeah.
why we have to make sure our caregivers are supported and our leaders are supported. All
Yes.
of us need to get support, and we need to demand it for ourselves. It makes us better caregivers. So I thought I would write, I started blogging, and I thought I would write the book and see if I couldn't help other caregivers care for themselves. It's not a luxury, guys. It's critical.
Mm-mm. I love that you mentioned the book because as we wrap up, I know that a lot of our viewers have been inspired by your insights today. And I highly encourage you all to check out her book, Self Care for Caregivers. We're giving away a free copy, and we are going to look for a special winner today. So if you're a caregiver, please know that this book really is packed with wisdom, practical strategies, and even reminders that taking care of yourself is really just as important as caring for others. Also, you can follow Suzanne on social media for more support and encouragement. She is on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn as Caregiver Warrior, and we will put the link to that in the comments below. And also, just so you know, at Care Staffing Solution, we are committed to supporting care business owners, managers, and caregivers as well with resources that truly make a difference. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter, Care Compass, for expert insights, leadership tips, and industry trends. So we will put the sign up link in the comments below. Also, you can join our free and private group where care leaders can share ideas, challenges, and solutions with one another. It's a real, solid, supportive community, and we'll also send in the link for you in the sign up in the chat. And now, the big reveal for our winner of the copy is our very own caregiver. Her name is April Liana. Congratulations, April. You get a free copy. We will send that your way. We already have your contact details, so no worries. We will contact you very shortly so you can get your free copy of Suzanne's book. And also, as a thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight, we're also giving away free consultations for every person watching right now. That's right. We are going to give you a free consultation. So please just sign up through the form that we will put in the comments and put in your email, and we will contact you very shortly. Now, please, we will keep this conversation going. Follow us on social media at Care Staffing Solution for more updates, webinars, and even valuable content. Now, Suzanne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Your
Thank you
time.
so much for having me. And I want everyone to understand that I see you and I hear you, and I know that this is an amazing, amazing thing you're doing. And please understand that, give yourself grace and
Mm,
really make sure that you empower yourself, because you're making a difference every single day in ways that you will never even know.
mm. And I think that's the best way to end it right there. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for your time and also for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you. And thank you as well to everyone who stayed throughout the event. We appreciate you. And until next time, take care and remember your presence makes a difference. Good night. Thank you.